Libor Štěpánek is the director of Masaryk University in Brno in the Czech Republic. This is the largest language center in the country with around 10,000 students every term. Libor studied history, English and political sciences, but it was his involvement in drama, in particular with musicals, which led him to appreciate the potential of a creative approach to language learning and teacher training. Libor's talk today is about English-mediated instruction, but we will also be able to see how creative approaches focus on other skills related to the larger context of language teaching. So, please join me in welcoming Libor to the stage. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming in this beautiful, sunny Belfast morning. It's great that you are here, and I'd like to say that I would like to thank you not only for coming here, but for the last days, because I've seen so many fantastic and inspiring ideas and sessions that I'm really happy that I can be part of this. Okay, today we're going to talk about EMI. EMI is a little bit small area that not many people are engaged in, but the interest is growing. And that's why today I'd like to talk a little bit about where the position of English teachers in the EMI area is and how the EMI practitioners can benefit, let's say, from our expertise. And in order to do so, first, of course, I'm going to say a few words about EMI itself, then about the two groups, English teachers, us, and who are the EMI practitioners. Then where do we meet, if we meet, and of course then what we can do. That will be the main part of the speech. But before I start, I think I should tell you a little bit about my city. This is Brno, a Central European town. It is about 500,000 people, and this is very specific, 500,000, because we have 400,000 people and 100,000 university students in the city. So you can imagine how vibrant the town is, but at the same time, with the current level of internationalization, you can imagine again how much English is, let's say, present in Brno and definitely at universities. I talk a lot about universities, but as been mentioned, I also do a lot of teacher training, and from my experience, of course, I bring examples from what I do at university, but a lot of those ideas or even exercises or tasks are transferable to other levels of education. So I hope that people working at any level of education can enjoy this talk. Okay, let's start with what EMI is. We know that we love abbreviations. In English, it's everywhere. We have a lot of them. And EMI is a special one because we cannot even agree on what it is. Okay, how to say it precisely. Some people say English medium instruction, English as a medium of instruction, English mediated instruction. I don't know how many other versions there are. Simply we agree on the fact that it includes English, mediation and instruction. So we need to know what it is, right? When we look at the definitions, we can go into detailed ones, like the use of the English language to teach academic subjects other than English itself, in countries or jurisdictions where the first language of the majority of the population is not English. We can go to more general ones, saying it is educational contexts in which English is a dominant language, or we can go to focused ones, saying that it is, again, some type of, let's say, sessions or education, and where there are no explicit language learning aims, and the focus is solely on teaching the subject content. Again, we could go into many, many other definitions. There is some agreement, some disagreement. For today, what I'm going to talk about is EMI as using English language to teach subjects, any subjects, to mostly non-native speakers in non-English speaking countries. Now I have to explain why there are those two negative things. Well, when we teach in English in a English-speaking country, it is just a common educational system. There is no need to explain what's different about it. And the second thing is that now mostly non-native speakers, especially at universities, what's been happening recently is that in English programs we have a mix of international students and English native speakers, and sometimes they are surprised that they need to take the same courses despite the fact that they are natives, and these are courses like academic writing or international communication. And it is important to realize that, of course, native speakers in this context are just one of the groups. And of course, again, if they are majority, then it would, we would be talking about common educational system, let's say. So this is about EMI. We also need to understand, as has been suggested, that EMI is that type of English, where English is present, or subject or area where English is present, that focuses purely on the content. And we will see later that English language, in a way, is partially irrelevant to the EMI practitioners. And that's why we need to think about who we are as English teachers, where our position is, and what we can do. So, who are we and who are they? Let's start with EMI practitioners. Maybe when we imagine teachers of other subjects, we see them as this. We see the demanding, boring, traditional, conservative types of methodologies, but maybe they are like this. And maybe students of physics have more fun than they have in our language classes. So we don't know precisely what the characteristics would be, but what we do know from research, that EMI practitioners, when they are, of course, in the context of teaching through the medium of English, their own subjects, they refuse to teach the language. Okay, they say, well, this is none of our business. They attach no importance to language integration, so of course it is in English, but not about English, and they refuse to inhabit an English language teacher identity, meaning, well, I'm a teacher of history or physics or whatever. Language teachers do their job, I do mine. It doesn't matter that it is in English, okay? They contradict themselves slightly because they also claim that English proficiency is a key factor for students and for the faculty, for the teachers. So it is another interesting thing. So I expect you to be very good at English, and at the same time, English is not an interesting thing in my sessions. So what they say is basically, you language teachers, you do your job with the language, I'll do my job with that. And sometimes they claim that they are not doing, or they are not being language teachers, but for example, when they deal with terminology and they provide glossaries or translations, they are technically doing what we do as language teachers. So again, it is an interesting mix of ideas and of the reality. Then let's take a look at us. English teachers, we are fantastic, aren't we? Our classes are full of joy, the students are happy that they can be with us, but maybe the rest of the world sees this, right? And they are afraid of us, and they don't know when they are talking to a language teacher whether we are actually talking or whether we are checking the grammar while they are speaking, right? So, again, we can't define who we are, but there are certain things that we know, and we know what is one area where we are really different to all other teachers, and it is this. Recent research, it is in the EU, but I presume that it is very similar anywhere where teachers can travel. 52% of foreign language teachers have been abroad for study during their teacher education, compared to 18% of other teachers. And 26% of foreign language teachers have taught abroad, compared to just 9%. Okay? So this is this huge difference, this huge advantage that we have. Half of us have studied abroad. 1/4 of us have taught abroad, and we have this confidence. Confidence that comes through the experience, that we know more. And that can be sometimes scary too, that 18 or 9% of other teachers. And when I talk of experience, I say experience, it is not expertise, it is experience. And we have to look at that later on. Okay, so when we look at the two groups, who are we and who are they? Of course, we are people who love languages. That's our job, that's why we've chosen that. We prefer verbal communication. We talk a lot, right? Then we tend to be plurilingual. A lot of teachers of one language are interested in other languages as well. So that's an interesting thing. We've seen that we travel more than the other teachers. And what is more important also is that our methodologies are extremely flexible and fluid. We can teach language through songs, through drama, through drill exercises. All of it can be effective in different situations, and that's why we tend to be also interested in teaching and in searching for new methodologies and ideas. I'm almost sure that many of you experienced this during COVID time, that language teachers were highly appreciated by the students, that their classes were much better, livelier, whatever, than classes of teachers of other subjects. So when we look at the EMI practitioners, we know that they love a lot of things, but it doesn't have to be languages, right? They consider language to be a tool. So while language for us is the goal, for them it is just a tool. They may prefer non-verbal forms of communication. If you imagine, for example, when engineers need to explain something to one another, they draw things, right? It's much easier for them than to explain verbally. So what we have to understand that in many situations, the verbal communication is not the first form or the most preferred one. Then they travel less, not for the purposes of language improvement. I'm not saying that they don't travel, but maybe when they travel, they do not take that much attention to the language around them. And when they speak English, all of them, EMI practitioners, they have to speak some English, they tend to ignore other languages. Again, I'm not saying that they don't speak or they don't use them, but they take it as a tool. So if it is practical for the job, then they are plurilingual. When it is not, they are in their majority, they don't use it. Then methodologies. Typically, it's difficult to teach chemistry through songs or drama, right? So they usually stick to one, I'm not saying conservative, but traditional, tested methodology or a limited series or area of methodologies. So that's another difference. And finally, especially at universities, you will find a lot of researchers for whom teaching is just part of their job. They enjoy their research, their science, and, well, they have to do some teaching as well. So we're extremely different, and sometimes we need to think of those two perceptions. For example, if we look at the famous Bloom's taxonomy, and we look at our understanding of the pyramid, right? So the remembering, understanding, and applying, these are the solid base. Without the language where we are, what we believe, the pyramid doesn't stand. We can't reach the top. Well, if you look at it from a different perspective, when you are a subject professor, where you know that the goal, the creative goal, is the ultimate aim of your session, language, those little remembering, understanding, applying thing, it is just one of the tools they need, the students, and it's just one of the many, and they may not be the most interesting ones for them. Okay, so we're completely different, right? So how do we collaborate? What do we do? Because in many situations we are asked as language teachers, now, could you provide some EMI training for our colleagues? Could you do that? Could you do that? And we say, of course, yes, because it's English. It includes the word English, right? And then we jump into the unknown and we don't know what's going on. But luckily, there are areas where we meet. Number one, we are both experts. We are experts in English or in language, and they are experts in their field. And once we use the expert language or the expert level of communication, they buy it. They can communicate with us. Okay, so not a language teacher, but an expert in languages or in English. Then, of course, we both teach. That's fine. And then there is another important thing. We have to be aware of the fact that EMI is always intercultural. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right? Why would we teach a Czech teacher, Czech students? Why would that be happening, history class in English? No reason. There is always something intercultural. Because it is intercultural, we need to also think about communication a little bit more, because it is all engaged there, or involved there. Then, of course, we share the fact that there is language present, so they should be aware of some of the language things, and obviously it is English, because it's English mediated instruction. And then we have two lovely small things I'm going to start with, and it is confidence and misconceptions. We English teachers are super confident because we've traveled a lot, we know, and we are the superior power through the verbal communication, right? We can tell what is right and well, what's better. We do not understand that they are also super confident, because actually at university, a lot of them publish. They read a lot of literature, and they just believe my English is perfectly fine, I can teach, which is not true, as we know. Okay? Or they just say, well, I've never had problems with my English while traveling. Fine, that's perfectly fine, but that's traveling and teaching is a different story. So, two different types of confidences. And then here are these misconceptions that we have, not only in relation to our students, but also, again, these two groups. For example, in one of our trainings, we had a fantastic French teacher of chemistry, and she did her micro activity, micro practice. And she did intro class to laboratory practice, whatever. And she used very direct language. It was like, you can't do this, you have to do this must be done, never do this, blah, blah, blah. And a language teacher feedback was, you know, you could hedge a little bit. You may as well try this out and so on. And she just started laughing, and she said, if you may as well end up in an explosion. I mean, these are students of chemistry, and it is a laboratory. So if they do not understand 100% what can and cannot be done, then there is pure danger. Similar thing, there was a civil engineer from Poland, and he was, again, his practice was about some ratio of materials in one type of concrete when you build bridges or something. And again, feedback from a language teacher was, you know, you can also discuss these things, like what are the advantages of this ratio and other ratios. Again, just laughing and saying, well, the advantage is that with this ratio, the bridge stays, and in other ratio, it just collapses. You don't discuss certain things, right? So we sometimes believe that language methodologies are universal. They're not. We should somehow understand that there are certain ways why, or certain reasons why, there are different methodologies in different areas. Okay? So now, let's take a look at what we can do and how we can somehow trick the EMI practitioners into collaboration so that they believe that we are not just showing off that our English is better, but we simply really want to help them. So, number one, we start with teaching awareness. Of course, I don't have to tell people here, we're all interested in teaching and in different strategies and approaches, but when you think again about other subjects, it doesn't have to be that clear to them. So we start before our trainings, we always start with some questionnaires, and we start with their self-reflection of what type of teacher they are, whether they've ever thought about it, whether they teach, whether they like it or not, simply reflection on teaching. Then we move on to reflection on their English skills. And imagine that, for example, number 12 is extremely controversial. What is the evidence of your level of English? At some schools, I was asked to leave this out because it was offensive. Okay, so some teachers are offended by the fact that they should say, well, I can do this, evidence. Okay, there should be some. And of course, then we focus on the EMI situation, what can be there as an well, to think about. Then we also try to differentiate between their attitudes, their interest, and their confidence, and in different areas. So we try to discuss with them, like, okay, what is your attitude to teaching or to English? Do you like English? Do you hate it? Is it just part of your job? And also, it is interest. Do you actually want to develop? Do you want to improve? and also you are confident. It's very different if you are a teacher who is confident in communication with students and teaching, but not confident in their English. You work differently with that one than if, for example, their attitude to all of those is just, sorry, not interested, I don't care. And there's one more thing we discuss, and it is their field. We know that, again, we are all here enthusiastic about English, about languages in general, and we know that majority of teachers are enthusiastic about their disciplines. And there are usually, a lot of them are fantastic teachers in their mother tongues. But when this is transferred into English, a lot of that is lost. And this area of discussion is focusing on that thing like, you have the enthusiasm for the discipline, for the subject. Let's try and think how to get it across to your English-speaking world as well, okay? And we end up with, with a result, so they should prepare some teaching motto or teaching logo. They can work with their computers or with pen and paper, whatever, it's really up to them. Simply, it is really for the sake of reflection of what teaching is. Then we want basically to bring them to understanding that when you teach an EMI, you should also focus on community of practice, meaning you negotiate what the common goal of the whole group is or could be. The dogma style that it says that it is a dialogic process, that knowledge is co-constructed, and this is the interactivity which is important. This is extremely, extremely important for them to understand that it differs because they may be used to their own educational systems, and they just say, no, we do it this way, and that's perfectly fine. And we say, look, this group is intercultural, you don't know them that much, they are from different educational systems. Why don't you discuss a little bit more what is happening, why it is happening, and maybe it can improve the teaching and the learning. And there is also the idea that we want to show that because there are so many things that need to be, or that are hidden, it is much better to improve this explicit understanding of what is going on, why we are doing certain things, why this needs to be done, or how. So this is about teaching. And because there is this variety in interculture, we again want to show them that teaching in an intercultural class is different. Obviously, what I said, we are more experienced. We are not experts in intercultural communication, but we are more experienced, and we know certain things. So we can help them, again, just to be aware of those differences. For example, in Europe, we have this saying academic 15 minutes in many universities. And when they use it, of course, they do not realize that academic 15 minutes in one culture can mean that a teacher can appear 15 minutes later, and this is perfectly fine. In other cultures, even students can come later, and it's perfectly fine. In others, we just move the beginning of the session 15 minutes later on, and in some, we just say it, and it has no consequence or impact on your behavior. Imagine you are a student from a country that doesn't use any academic 15-minute saying, that's perfectly fine, you misunderstood, you don't understand what's being said, you just take it as a comment. Imagine that you are from a country that has different understanding of the saying. So you behave differently, and you think that you are behaving correctly, because in your country, this saying means something else. So this is one of the things that we show to EMI practitioners. There's another thing. Are you planning your trip in winter? Of course, I'll arrive in August. I come from Argentina. This is our winter, right? And imagine that, of course, normally, before COVID, we were just thinking, yes, the students are here, they should understand what we mean by winter, what is north and what is south. But during COVID, we had a lot of classes where the students were based in their homes. And, of course, the cultural contact was zero. So these type of discussions were really important. Or you can ask, how old are you? And you get this lovely answer, do you mean Korean or international age? Imagine that these students have to think about such basic things, about age, about seasons, about simply everything. So this is all that includes the let's say, success of EMI teaching that we have to be aware. I'm not saying we cannot know all cultures across the globe, but we could be sensitive of, do you understand when I say this? Do you know what I mean? And all those things. And in order to make sure that they understand what students are doing, we have this exercise. I will try this with you, and well, of course, you're not going to do the exercise, but I will show you what it does to the teachers, and I will elaborate on that. So they see this picture, everybody has that one, and they will get these instructions. Allora abbiamo questa attività. La attività si chiama pecore, ma non importa. Le istruzioni sono semplici. Dobbiamo trovare quanto più pecore possibile in base al loro numero. Cominciamo con 1 e continuiamo 2, 3, 4, 5. Se non troviamo un numero, il prossimo non conta. Quindi se 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 va bene. Se 1, 2, 3, 5 non va bene. Capito? Cominciamo. Okay, this is it. They get 1 minute for that. So, what happens in class? There is a group of people who understands Italian, as here, so you know how crap my Italian is, and at the same time you understand what I was saying, so you can follow the activity. Then there are basically most Europeans who can identify, we choose Italian because it's similar to, well, it's based on Latin. Latin is in many European languages, and of course this 1, 2, 3, well, this is general knowledge in Europe, so you get some understanding. And then the rest of the world, they get my body language. And let's say this picture. So what happens is that some participants, they start doing the task. Some guess what they are asked to do, and they do that. And for example, we had once a student when we asked, so what did you get? Well, the instruction is find as many numbers as possible, one after another. Okay, you can't miss a number. And this woman said, okay, well, I have 145. And everybody was, oh my God, in 1 minute, how could you do it? She said, well, we were supposed to look for the highest one. Okay, that was her interpretation. And then there are people who just do something, people who just pretend to do something. They should say, I see everybody working, so I was pretending I was doing something, I don't know. And then there would be some who are asking colleagues, what are you doing? Well, did you understand? Did you get it? What was it? Some people who copy, who just watch and say, okay, well, they're drawing something, well, okay. And some they just say, no, I didn't get it, I'm not doing it. And this is truly appreciated by the participants of our trainings because they say, oh, now we understand what is the situation of our students. Many of them, and it is English, of course, they are enrolled in the courses because they do speak English, but in certain situations they are in the moment where you speak to them, well, whatever language you choose, and it doesn't matter because it's a new concept, new idea. So this is really important that they understand that sometimes the results of the students or reactions of the students may not be due to their lack of intelligence or whatever, but simply it is the matter of the language and communication they need to, again, discuss. So now we're coming to what we love, and it is the communication, language, and English awareness. And there are so many things that we need to think about. Number one, we can help EMI practitioners in suggesting that there are different levels of language or different areas of language, and some of them are important, some of them are not for them. So, for example, subject-specific vocabulary, no problem. It is technical vocabulary for the subject, all is defined. They will find it in every textbook, no problem. Academic vocabulary is slightly different, because you will see later that it is more general words used in education, and in different contexts they can mean slightly different things or have different connotations. Then we have basic interpersonal conversational skills. Again, no need to think about how they communicate among one another. It's perfectly their own thing. We don't have to care about that. On the other hand, we have cognitive academic language proficiency. It means the skills that students need in language to understand the more demanding concepts. meaning that this is an area that the teachers should check whether the students are on the level to be able to understand, for example, explanation of certain contexts. And finally, classroom language, and it is something that is specifically for the EMI practitioners. They have to be very good at it because it is the signposting language, the organization language, the cues they give to the students so that the students can understand. Okay. And we can also explain to them that when they are talking to a friend or small talk, this is spoken, this is speaking. But when they are teachers, and especially, for example, at university, their speaking is somewhere in the middle on the continuum between speaking and writing. It's much more heavily informationally loaded. We use different phrases than when we use the everyday language. So it can also help them to understand that there are different types of languages we use. Obviously, we can also focus on, for example, in our case, on academic writing. Why do we have different styles? Why it is effective to write in one way or not in another? In English especially, because we know that in our native cultures, we write differently. Okay, we communicate differently than it is in English. So to explain that there is different logic behind academic writing, for example. Okay, and we can explain to them that there are several areas that they should really focus on, or we can focus on. And it is, number one is accuracy. And this is the, let's say, general academic vocabulary. This is a situation when we talked with computer scientists who were having a problem with publishing because they overused the word of suggest because it was it had highest frequency in writing, and they didn't realize that simply when in computer science when you use the word suggest with your result suggest, that you are saying that your results are not that fantastic. Okay, you have better words, reporting verbs. That was the reaction of a microbiologist who said, well, hang on a minute, I think for us, suggest is the number one, is the top thing. You have the best results with suggest. Of course, we had to go and discuss it with lexicographers, do some research. Yes, obviously we verified suggest in every academic discipline has different value. And we have to understand this, that look, when I'm talking to a computer scientist, the word prove is perfectly fine. It's like in mathematics. When you are talking to a microbiologist, you don't prove anything, right? You just suggest, and it is as good as we can get. So, accuracy. Or we were talking to history students, PhD students, and they were overusing in their writing. It was during the COVID time. They were overusing the words shed light and look at. And we try to analyze, why do you do that? What do you do when you shed light on something? What is the actual thing? And do we have synonyms for that? Aren't they better in certain contexts? So this is just a list of ideas they wrote in the chat. And we again discussed that how accurate we are, whether it is the right word to be used in that moment or not. Also, what we need to think about is the explicitness. We said already that we are in intercultural context and we need to be explicit. So when I say certain expression or certain instruction and it is very much clear in our local culture, I should try and explain or check whether it is clear, and I should be very explicit what I mean. In any moment. And it is something that we repeat, that explicitness is really one of the main rules of being effective EMI practitioner. And once we are explicit, we also need to be consistent. As language teachers, we could say, okay, how many phrases you can use when you are, for example, outlining your presentation or where you are introducing references. And we could simply see, okay, this person has fantastic vocabulary, range of phrases they can use. But for EMI practitioners, we suggest, look, it's great you have 100 of them. Choose 3 or 4 that you use consistently so that students who are not that good at catching your signposting language can get used to it and they understand what you are doing in your sessions while you're organizing your teaching, for example. So, thank you. So this is something that is really, really important that we are accurate, we're explicit, and we are consistent. That's something that people can really focus on. And then we also can draw their attention to the fact that language has a lot of layers, that language can be perceived by many, many different senses. And for example, when we present something for the first time, we don't have to do it, for example, we may be a teacher who is not that confident in English, or we say you should be accurate, explicit, consistent, and say, come on. Well, I am trying, but all of these things I may not understand. So we can always tell them, look, there are huge, great materials on the internet, and the students will appreciate if they can see different sources. So, for example, you don't have to explain what a talk is. You can show them one type of explanation.
There it goes. About 10 seconds. Isn't that amazing? And it rotates seen from below clockwise.
So you see, this is one type of explanation. There is not much words, but students can see what is happening there. There is another
terms.
teacher.
If I apply a force down on this side of the wheel, I create a torque. Now, torque is force times the distance from the rotating axis. You could call it R. So torque is the force applied times the radius away from the turning axis. Now, what's the direction of that torque?
Okay, so you have two different teachers explaining the same thing. So you have two sources of that explanation. And if you are not the person who enjoys listening to people and try to understand what they are saying, maybe you are the type of learner who prefers reading. So they should also get the text so that they can read what talk is. And maybe you're not even that, and you understand everything perfectly from just a picture or just a formula. So it is one of the things that we try to show the EMI practitioners, that there is certain abundance of materials these days that they can use, and their position is, for example, then only to discuss with students. So what do you understand? What is for you better explanation, or do you get everything, or how would you count the talk or whatever? So this is a very important thing, again, for the EMI practitioners. I must say that there is certain resistance there, because obviously there are teachers like us, so they say, I explain it best, right? My explanation is always clear and everybody's happy. But if they don't say this, and if they have certain doubts about their teaching in certain moments, then it is a thing that we can really, recommend, for example. And then we have the last thing that is, for most of them, extremely important. And for us, it is something that is, that is something we don't like that much. And it is the position of English as lingua franca. Of course, here, we're English teachers. We know what we do, why we do it, and English and language is the goal. We know that EMI practitioners are people who find the language just a tool, and we know that they operate in the area, as we said at the beginning, where they are not in situations where native speaker is the dominant person in the country or in the educational system. Of course, we know that we have different types of EMI situations. We can have fully English-speaking campus, for example, in a country that is either bilingual or non-English speaking. Then we can have, for example, bilingual universities, like in many Dutch universities, where you have English and Dutch would be the same, would have the same position, and you can choose whichever line you would like to study. And then you are in situations when sometimes, for example, at some universities or some schools, only some subjects are taught in English. And of course, all these situations differ considerably. Now, when we talk about English as lingua franca, what we are saying and what the EMI practitioners can enjoy hearing is, number one, that there is no national culture related to language. What we mean by that is that English, for the purposes of teaching in an intercultural global setting, has no connotations to the or any local culture. That's why we have to come back to the explicitness. We have to explain everything because the group that have met, they have no attachment, cultural attachment, emotional attachment to the language from the natural environment. That's why, for example, when we use these idioms or the phrases, they can be used in English, but they can be, for example, local for Czech culture, and they may be very strange for a native speaker. But why do you say this in English? It doesn't make much sense. Well, it does, because it's locally understood, and you have to explain to the EMI practitioner that, well, you have to be careful about this. For example, a lot of students are surprised when they are asked for publishing in English by big cultures. So, for example, you are asked by a German publisher to follow German style of writing, despite the fact that the wording is in English. And of course, native speakers have problem with that. Okay, once we were publishing with a colleague of mine, she was from New Zealand, I'm Czech. So when we were given the feedback, how we should change our texts, I said, no, what is that? I don't understand it. The changes that were recommended, I said, well, I fully understand it. The Central European style of writing. Well, they want to have it in English, but so that the mind, Central European mind, understands what we are saying, we want to have that in that structure. And she was saying, well, I do not want to publish it in this way. My colleagues in New Zealand, they will be laughing at me. That makes no sense in English, okay? Well, you want to get published or not? So finally, obviously, she went the German style. But this is the very important thing that we have to think about, that this lingua franca is changing the rules in big way. Now, very important thing, native speakers in this situation are minority position. You can't imagine how great it is to hear this for EMI practitioners. Imagine they are not that confident in their English. They have students 20 students in their class and 2 are native speakers. And they say, no, I can't teach that class. I'm so ashamed of my English. Whatever they say, they're much better and whatever. Just say, don't worry. They're just a minority. The other day I had a student from the US, a teacher from the US, and she was in a class of international communication. She enrolled. And she actually wrote me an email saying, well, do you think it is necessary for me to join the class because I am native speaker and a teacher? Well, I showed her the syllabus suggesting, well, the fact that you are a native speaker doesn't mean you can communicate internationally well, right? It just says that you are a native speaker. So she was an enormous help in class because she could bring some insights and ideas, so that's fantastic. But again, I'm language teacher, I'm English teacher, so I'm confident to use what they bring to class with their, again, native speaker confidence. For many of EMI practitioners, this is fair. They just do not like the idea, okay? And of course, many of you probably have seen at huge world conferences this sign, note to native speakers, adjust your language to the global audience. So this is the sign that now we have to coexist, the native speakers and non-native speakers in this area of, well, English is means of communication. We native speakers, we know better in certain ways, but again, there is no native speaker, for example, of academic English, right? Everybody has to learn that area. So this is something which is extremely important to realize. Again, it is great for EMI practitioners to hear this. I'm not saying that it is something that we want to hear, but it is great for them. And also there is one more thing, and it is connected to this lingua franca, and it is the different focus of interest again. For example, a lot of people say, yeah, you know, but my accent, I say, well, unless you want to be a spy, you don't have to have a perfect British or American accent. It's just, as long as you are expert, you are explicit, people can understand what you are saying, keep your accent, they know where you're from, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to really go deep into working on your accent. Or you don't have to, again, you don't have to focus on great variety of vocabulary. No, for your students, it can be more helpful if you stick to certain area or certain focus. So this is one of the things that is also really important for them, because what they remember usually from their language classes was definitely this native speaker top position, and they were looking up to that, and they feel that, okay, when I need to deal with a language, I need to really aspire to get there. No, you don't. This is EMI, and this is English, but English is lingua franca for the purposes of your teaching. Okay, so I'm slowly coming to the summary. So first, I try to suggest that EMI is a very specific area of English, and it is not the most comfortable area for us English teachers, because it is the area that includes English. English is important, but the focus is somewhere else. Maybe some of us like the idea of CLIL, where we have this combination of content and language, but EMI is somewhere completely else. So this is something that we have to remember. The other thing is that who we are English teachers and EMI practitioners. We are experts in our fields, so there is something we can relate to, but we have different methodologies, different teaching objectives, and our aim really is to understand what is the thing they need in English. This, from us, this is important. And of course, we meet in several areas. We need in the level of expertise, so we can understand when we talk to one another. And we meet in the fact that we practice teaching. And also we need to be aware of interculturality in our classes. We need to know about something more about communication skills than what we know in our, let's say, local or cultural. We should be aware of language and differences in language, and of course, English is the center of attention from our end. But simply English is present. And how we can be useful as English teachers, as we said, we usually tend to have a better approach or attitude to different methodologies and trying out things and doing things differently. So we can help them to enhance self-reflection and openness to diverse methodologies, tools, strategies, and approaches. And we don't really have to shout out that it is all in English. Okay, for example, all our trainings are very much in, well, everything is happening in English. And of course, we as English teachers try to push the presence of English there very much, and the beauty of English and everything, but on the other hand we try to present it at the same time as those other areas that I've presented today. So to conclude, I would like to say that we as language teachers, English teachers, we should not tell EMI practitioners how to teach in English. I think that this is not our job, but we should help them find their best teaching selves in English. Okay, thank you very much. This is all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for that amazing talk. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure your head is now buzzing with ideas. If you have comments or questions for Libor, he will be available in room 1A at 3:15 to respond and to talk to you further about this plenary. In the meantime, please enjoy the conference, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Spit it a little bit up. Thank you.